talk a little bit about how to stay healthy. We're going to cover a couple topics that Andrea and I have covered in the past and just kind of put it all together in one video. I thought that would be handy for people, wouldn't it? Instead of having to go back and try and find all these different videos.
Sure. Sounds
Yes,
good.
yes. So we're live on Facebook, everyone. Welcome. There's my friend Andrea. Here I am. We're just talking about this extreme cold temperatures that we're having. Holy cow.
Yeah, somebody said it was going to be a cold winter.
Well, yeah, really it's not. We've had a nice winter. We've had an uh, extraordinarily warm winter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we're going
Yeah,
into
usually
deep freeze
we're
now
going
for,
into,
you know.
yeah, we'll have a little bit of cold here for a couple of months, but it won't be like 2014 when it was like around zero for 2 months. That was crazy.
Yeah, we had that 2 years ago. Because I
Did
remember
you?
when I left here. Normally this time of year, I spend the whole month of February in Australia, as you and I are talking about, and I usually leave the last week in January. And that year, 2 years ago, the January, it started before Christmas, and it was below
Right.
zero. And when I tried to leave, it had been cold for so long that they actually canceled my flight.
I remember that.
They canceled it 2 days in a row, not because of snowfall, but because it was so cold. They said the jet engines just wouldn't run properly. And
Well, you don't want that.
yeah, so the problem for me was is that I got ready to go. I packed everything. I get up to the airport. I'm sitting there waiting to get on the plane. But before I left my house, I shut my water off. I
Mhm.
turned the furnace down because I'm like, hey, when I get back, it's gonna be warmer up. And it doesn't take very long for a house to cool off when it's negative 40. And I get to the airport. I sat around there for 3 4 hours, and then they said, "Oh no, your flight's canceled till tomorrow." And then I went back the next day, did the same thing, shut the water off, shut the heat off,
Right.
and I get to the airport, and they said, "Oh no, it's been canceled till tomorrow." And then they wanted to cancel it on the third day. I said, "You mean to tell me there's no flights going from here to Minneapolis, Chicago, or Denver?" And they said, "Well, yeah, there is, but you're 2 days backed up, and so we got to get everybody else out." I said, "Oh no, you got to understand. I've got a connection going to Australia, and you're not just messing up this flight, you're messing up that flight." So they got me on a flight.
Yeah. Well, in this cold weather, I'm dealing with trying to find a ramp to get my mother in the house in a wheelchair. We were kind of going to talk about aging. Have you done anything as far as handicap stuff for your parents to make things more safe for
There,
them?
yeah, their house is all on the level. There's no steps at all, so they don't have to worry about that. But when I broke my leg in that motorcycle wreck, I mean, Dad made my car handicap accessible. I had a Suburban. He made it so that I could possibly drive it with just my left leg, since my right leg was the one that was all beat up. And then he built a wheelchair ramp for me going into my house. He built it out of 2x4s and plywood.
Well, I was thinking about building a ramp, but the price of lumber is 3 times what it was last summer
Is
right
it really?
now. So it would be like I can buy an aluminum one for half the cost.
Yeah.
So
Harbor Freights. Yep. Harbor Freights. Yeah. Well, there you go. So um, yeah, getting old is tough on people, isn't it?
yeah, and we've talked so many times about how your stem cells, you don't have the activity of stem cells when you get older, and a lot of the functions of the body deteriorate if you're not doing something to support them. And my mother's 89, and she fell and broke her leg, so we're
Yeah. Broke
trying to
her
figure
hip.
things out.
Broke her hip or broke her
No,
leg?
no, her leg, thank God it wasn't her hip.
Okay. Hey, my dogs are going to start barking here any minute because I ordered some groceries and I just saw the car pulling up. So So don't be surprised for those of you that are listening if you hear these dogs barking. I got two black labs now. One barks, the other one barks. But yeah, it's tough getting old. And the thing about it is that you get older, and if you break bones, I broke my back. Uh, it's 7.5 weeks ago, and
Wow.
I'm healing up amazingly for being almost 59 years old. I'm healing up pretty amazingly. And the neurosurgeon, she said, well, what are you doing? What are you doing different than all my other patients are doing? And I said, well, I read this study from Japan, and it talked about how to build bone strength faster and how to beat osteoporosis and osteopenia.
Mm-hmm.
And a perfect time. Let's talk about that since you brought up your mom, and myself. So remember now, I don't know if you were on the call when I did the first call. I don't think you made it that day, but I was talking about bone health, and I was talking about the study that I just read. This was back in November. I talked about the study I just read out of Japan, and they said that the problem with it is that we weren't getting enough vitamin K2.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You've mentioned that before.
Yeah, so we were getting plenty of calcium, and we were getting plenty of the vitamin. Well, a lot of people aren't getting enough vitamin D, but they're getting enough vitamin D to build bone strength. But they aren't getting enough vitamin D for some other things we'll talk about. But where they were missing was vitamin K2. And I
Yeah.
bring this up to people, like I brought it up to my mom yesterday again. My mom is in her 80s as well, and mom said, well, her doctor told her that she has to watch the amount of K2 that she takes in. I'm sure your mom's doctor would say the same thing.
Could be.
Yeah, and so I mean, you've heard why they don't want you to take too much K2, right?
No, I haven't. What is that?
Oh, okay. Well, K2 thins your blood.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my mother couldn't have that 'cause she's on blood thinners.
Boom. So she's on blood thinners, but the vitamin K2 thins the blood. So which one is actually more healthy for you? Probably the K2, right? So
Right.
that's my first argument. But the doctors, their argument to my mom was when she brought that up. My mom is, pretty stubborn that way, and so when they said, "Well, we're going to put you on blood thinners," they said, "Well, we can control the
Right.
thinning of
That's
the
their
blood
thing.
with the Coumadin, with the warfarin, um, and it's basically it's rat poison. They used it for
Yeah.
killing rats. It makes the rats bleed to death internally because their blood gets so thin. Well, with
Yeah.
humans, you don't give that
Breaks your
much.
muscle down too.
But I mean, let's just talk about this part. And so they won't let you give somebody a patient vitamin K2 because, oh no, it thins the blood out too much. Well, the thing about it, Andrea, is this. This is what the Japanese study said. The Japanese study said that if this is the container that holds your vitamin K2, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's full to the top, as far as now we're talking about the vitamin K2 that's used for blood thinning. So when
Okay.
all those receptors are full of K2, you can't you can't over there they go. You can't overfill it, so you can't make the blood too thin by adding more K2 because the K2 leaks out.
Oh, so it's like a receptor
Yeah, there's
in the
receptors.
body.
And
Okay.
so you can't overfill it because once it's full, it's full. So that all that other vitamin K2 goes to work doing other things like building bone.
Oh, building bone. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you take a look at a lot of bone building products, when you take a look at a lot of products for vitamin K2, they put in about, you know, 12 milligrams, 1200 micrograms, right? Which is very little, because a thousand milligrams is a quarter teaspoon.
So
But
our product Renovator has K2 in it also.
does it have K2? Renovator does not, but vitamin or the calcium K2 product does.
Okay.
But so when I was reading a study from Japan, they were recommending 45 milligrams,
Oh.
45 milligrams, which is three times as much as what most vitamins have. And even when you look at the Sizzle product has a low level of vitamin K2 in it. It's more around that 120 micrograms, 12 milligrams.
Okay.
And that's because in the United States we have to follow the standards of the FDA, the USDA, whoever sets the standards, and they say, hey, here's 100%. It's the 12 milligrams, 120 micrograms,
Right.
right? So, but again, if you fill that jar over full, it doesn't make the blood too thin. It doesn't thin the blood out. And that's been the misconception and the misunderstanding. That's been the myth that's been going around for years, um,
Mm-hmm.
because they're trying to tell us that it's going to make the blood too thin. Well, it's not. It's not, according to the Japanese study. And so I started taking higher levels of vitamin K2 back in November after I did that talk here on the doctor's clinic about that. And I took that along with my calcium K2 product from Sizzle.
Uh-huh.
And when I broke my back, the doctor said, "Holy cow, your bones are like super strong." And because normally, if like your mom's age or most 60-year-olds, they say that most 60-year-olds, have osteoporosis or osteopenia, which is the lack of minerals in the bone. And so they take, and where those spaces are, where those holes are, they inject this glue in there. It's called kyphoplasty. That's the surgery. And they basically glue the bone back together. But they couldn't do that on mine because oh, you can see my dog standing on the chair back there.
He's waiting for his treat.
Yeah. Well, I started a stir fry here before I got on the call, so they're probably all waiting for that. But so the thing is that I started taking that, and my bone strength is so good. She said that they can't do the surgery, they can't do the kyphoplasty because there isn't those empty spaces to put the glue in.
But I bet you're healing up really good.
Oh, I mean, I feel great. I mean, pain wise, if I overdo it, I can feel my back, and it's more the muscles.
Yeah.
But I'm still wearing the back brace, like they have me doing, and uh, and I'll wear that, till the end of March, like they've told me.
So you said you're doing the K2 product from Sizzle, but you're also doing extra K2?
Yep, I'm doing another 30 milligrams on top of that.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm following that Japanese study. So that's how, so there we talked about bone health, but as we look at people who are aging, right? One of the things that you and I've talked a lot about over the course of the last, well, year and a half, really, right? Because we started
Mm-hmm.
talking about senescence, senolytics,
Right.
back in the summer of 2019, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
and and I stumbled across the information on that because I read a study from Mayo Clinic. Remember that?
Yep. I do.
Mayo Clinic said that they were going to be the top anti-aging clinic in the world, and and I read that, and I'm like, wonder what they're doing. So I jumped on their website, and I did some searches, and they were talking about this senescence, right? And like
Right.
Tom Senior was talking about, Aubrey de Grey, one of the iconic figures in
Right.
anti-aging, he had said that that was kind of the last frontier in anti-aging. It was like the wild, wild west because how do you stop the senescence, right? And if you want to explain to people what senescent cells are, maybe explain to people what senescent cells are.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the stem cells that no longer function correctly. And me and some people that write articles call them zombie cells
Zombie cells.
because they hang out in your body and basically act like zombies. They won't die off, and yet they're affecting all the cells around them with extreme toxins. So they're causing disruption of the cells around them. And that puts a whole toxic load on your body. And we've seen, like you've shared so many times, that senescent cells is basically, the way I look at it, it's the degeneration that's happening in the body, because it leads to kidney problems, lung problems, heart problems, all kinds of system problems caused from these senescent cells.
Yep. Yeah, because basically, the easiest way to think of them is think of them like rioters. They're
Right.
rioting, and they don't want to just riot alone. They don't want to be the only one. They want you to join in on the riot for no
Mm-hmm.
reason. For no reason, Andrea. Jump in. Come on, let's have some fun. Let's go knock a
But,
building down. Let's go
but
burn up some.
they're supposed to stop rioting and die off naturally, and they do that better when you're younger. But as you age, the ability to do that, or maybe our world today has lessened the ability of those cells to die off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we look at aging, the thing is that um, the cells are designed to live to be about 120 years old, just through all the different processes. But um, up until the last 100 years, we really haven't had the right nutrition, and now we're seeing people that are living longer, living healthier, but we've started to have so much of this processed food, and all this processed food, it has preservatives in it and things like that, and they say that those preservatives act on the cells, and that's one of the reasons that they go into this senescence, is because of the preservatives
Oh,
in our food, right?
okay.
Because it stimulates them to stay alive a lot longer and things like that. But there's other things too, toxins and all of that. So the whole process, we really want to go back to the beginning. And where does it start to have the damage? Well, the damaged DNA can be repaired by resveratrol, right?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and resveratrol, it was I'm not going to mention the doctor's name because he always sues people when you mention his name. But so this doctor, this renowned scientist, who's from Australia but working at a university in the United States, got these huge grants, and he came up with all these studies on resveratrol, and he said it is the holy grail in anti-aging. And
Mm-hmm.
resveratrol comes from red grape seeds and things like that. So all of a sudden, you saw, Time magazine and Newsweek magazine, all these major publications. They said that the red wine market was going to go sky high, skyrocketing, because of the fact that they proved that this resveratrol in red wine um, slowed the aging process, right? The problem with it is you have to drink 380 glasses of red wine to get enough resveratrol out of wine to actually make a difference. That's per day, not per year.
You're right.
Yeah. So can you really get enough resveratrol from red wine?
No.
No. And so Dr. Sinclair, sorry, I can't say his name. His work, this doctor's work, he he showed this, and but nobody could really recreate it because they found that they were using the wrong kind of grapes. They were already oxidized. Resveratrol was oxidized, and so if you go to the store and you just buy some resveratrol off the shelf, chances are, even if you took the 380 milligrams per day, you're not going to get enough.
Right.
You're
So
not
there's
going
a
to get
better
enough.
way to produce it.
Right. So that's where our friends at Sizzle came in, and they figured out, well, how do you do that? Well, you make it so it never gets exposed to oxygen, and you produce it so that they're contained in as microsomes, that hold it so that it doesn't get exposed to oxygen, and it can stay on the shelf for 2 years, and it's still got the same potency. And so a 20-ounce shot glass um, gives you the equivalent of you know, or not 20-ounce shot glass. That'd be huge, wouldn't it? That'd be like
Three
a whole
quarters.
bottle.
Yeah.
Three-quarter ounce shot glass um, gives you the equivalent of 380 glasses of red wine in one little shot glass.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, so that's called eternity, and you and I have talked about that. So when we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about anti-aging, I always start there because you know our DNA is getting damaged all the time. I mean, today, my DNA is going to get damaged. It's going to get hit by some kind of damage, probably 100 times. you know,
Yep.
stress and just normal life and getting exposed to different toxins that are out here in our environment, stuff that you really can't, you can't live in a plastic bubble. And so you get exposed to this stuff, and so it damages your DNA. So the resveratrol, it works through the sirtuin genes, and
Mhm.
that's how it works. And we won't get way into the science, because today is just kind of an overall cover on that. But a couple of years ago, I want to say about 4 years ago, some more new science came out, and there was a form of vitamin B3 called nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide, which are forms of vitamin B3. And they're precursors for this substance called NAD plus,
Yep.
right? And when you and I have talked about this, you know, thousands of times, I'm sure,
I think so.
but they found that it's the fuel for the resveratrol. So there's the link. So the resveratrol helps the sirtuin genes, but it needs a fuel to actually get the process going, and that's where the NAD plus comes from. And the problem with it is, and what's the percentage of decrease or decline of NAD in humans as they age? You remember that?
I I don't know the percentage, but by the time you're I don't know. I forgot.
Well, I think it's by the time you're 50, you've lost like 50% of your function of the NAD, haven't you?
Yeah, it starts at 35 actually, if I remember right. I
Yeah, and it
know it
starts.
was the senescent cells by age 40, I think half of your stem cells are in senescence, which was a frightening fact for
Well,
me.
yeah, we'll go over that in a little bit. So just staying on the topic of the NAD instead of fast forwarding. So the NAD then is we can't take it. Well, they can inject NAD into you, and but most people can't afford to have that done and things like that. But um, we can take these precursors, which will actually stimulate your body to make more NAD, and
Right.
that in turn
And
works
there's a
with the
lot more
resveratrol.
to increasing NAD than just what we're talking about as far as support of senescent cells.
That's right. So so right now we're just talking about is not as far as like the senescent cells. You want to fast forward to that senescent cell thing, but we're uh,
I
we're
like
we're still
that
talking
part.
about the sirtuin genes, right? And the resveratrol and so when we're looking at the NAD, yeah, there's more to it, and that's where this formula that we came up with called the Age Pill. It's just been a phenomenal product. I mean, some of the
Fabulous.
testimonials. What things have you heard as far as like other people? And we can't make any guarantees. We can't say that, oh, this is what's going to happen when you take the product. And I got to throw that disclaimer on there right away. Might as well do it right away, and just say, So these are some other people have noticed, and we're not guaranteeing that you'll have it, but what have you noticed, Andrea? Let's just hear your testimony.
Well, let's just say I started taking this July 2017. So I've taken it 3.5 years almost. And this phase does not look anything like it would have looked if I had never taken Age Pill, because I was already 6 months before I started taking Age Pill looking quite old, and I wasn't enjoying looking in the mirror. So it has changed my appearance drastically, but we've heard people say hair growth, fingernail strength and growth. Um, for myself, after a few months, I noticed like the veins on the back of my hands that were all puffy, like my mother's, who's 23 years older than me. They all laid flat. So now my veins are flat. They're not all like rivers across the back of my hand. I had neuropathy in my lower legs. I got rid of that pain. I had nerve pain in my ankles. It got rid of that pain. So it supports nerve function. And had other people that had taken it and they had success as far as nerve situations too. Weight loss, skin, fabulous results on your skin. It's like you can't take a makeup or use a makeup or a skin cream that's going to do more for your skin than what the Age Pill ingredients did. My biggest thing was I got my brain back, and not everyone would have a loss of memory, maybe from the same reason I did, which, you and I talked about, because it removes glycation, just gunk that builds up in your cells. And actually, I noticed it in 8 days of taking H pill. And I called
Wow.
you up and said, why can I remember things now? Like, what's going on? And you said, well, you must have glycation in your brain and it got cleaned out. But I have friends who've taken H pill and they got great results for other things, but it didn't get rid of their brain or short-term memory loss. So theirs is caused from something else. But for me, that's my biggest thing. Doc, I still recognize it all the time in my life. Like that time you and I went on that little trip and you were reading off addresses to me and I was writing them on envelopes for you. There is no way I could have done that previous to H pill, because I would have forgotten everything you told. Like, you couldn't have given me like 315 Main Street Southwest and I wouldn't have remembered it to
Yeah.
write it down. And I just noticed it. Like, I called a company the other day and I had to relate some numbers, series of numbers to them, and totally would have forgotten it 4 years ago. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So it's like all through my day, all through my life, I'm going, yes, look at how good my brain works now. I'm so excited
Yeah.
about that, because I was
Uh,
a
you
little
know,
concerned.
I noticed the same thing. My memories come back. I used to have the pocket at the end of the day as a guy. I'd have a pocket full of post-it notes. Sorry, I have to keep feeding my dog so he stays quiet. But
Thought you were
I,
feeding
I'd
yourself.
have I'd have a pocket full of post-it notes at the end of the day, and I noticed that, like you, I had my memory back, and I mean, and not only memory, but just being able to put two and two together, and the mental clarity and all that. Um, just amazing, and then I noticed that I don't have to wear reading glasses anymore. If you go
I,
back a
I
few
just
years,
I just did that. Eyesight, hearing.
oh, I thought you
Um,
were trying to be a walleye or something.
no, hearing, eyesight. My eyesight's improved. I used to wear 8.25 contact strength, and now I wear 6.
All right. I've never worn glasses, but I had to get reading glasses a couple years ago, and now I can sit there on my stupid phone, and I can sit here and I can read. In fact, I hardly use my computer except for on Tuesdays when we do this call. Maybe a few other things, banking notes and stuff like that, where I have programs on my computer that I don't on my phone. But you know, it's just an amazing product because it does have some anti-aging properties, and so it's called the H pill, which stands for anti-glycation extreme, which Andrea already mentioned talking about. So then, Tom Senior, who passed away last year, but Tom did a presentation at the International Stem Cell Congress over in Spain a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and he was talking about the H pill, and he was talking to Aubrey de Grey and some of these
Mhm.
renowned anti-aging scientists, and that's where they were talking about this senescence thing, and they were saying, how this is going to be the next frontier, but it's probably going to take a decade for us to figure it out, and and Tom came home, and I remember he called me up one morning and we were talking, and he said, I got it. I figured it out. And and I was talking to him. I said, what'd you figure out? And he said, he told me the whole story about the World Congress of Stem Cells, and how they were talking about senescence, and I said Ficitin, right? And you could just hear dead silence on the phone. And he said, how'd you know about that? And I said, well, I read this story on Mayo
I
Clinic,
do a
and
little research.
I said, I've been on. This was in August, and I told him, I said, yeah, I've been taking Fiston since April, and he said, how'd you find out about that? And I said, well, Mayo Clinic had this study that they said, and blah 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 blah, and Mayo Clinic was going to use this chemo drug called dastatinib, and they were going to combine it with Guacertin and a couple other things, black tea extracts, and they were going to you know support senescence, the yeah, getting rid of the senescent cells. And I said, so then I thought, well, they had to have a natural substance to even think of using dastatinib for it. And I kind of dug down the wormhole a little bit, and that's where I found out that it was fisetin. And fisetin comes from
Hmm.
apples, and they used to say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some truth to that. And so you get from apples and strawberries and onions and other fruits and vegetables, there's this ingredient that called fisetin that gets rid of these senescent cells. But the thing about it is, Andrea, you can't eat enough apples or strawberries in a day to get enough to really make a therapeutic dose.
Right.
Maybe if you ate it every day, if you had a couple apples every day all your life, from
Hmm.
onward. But you know, pretty amazing stuff. So now it was kind of like this whole piece of this puzzle. So we're 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 getting rid of the damage to the DNA with the sirtuin genes. We're supporting that part of the body. We have to say support because we're not really it's not a drug, so it's not changing things. So that's why you have to say it supports. And we're supporting the sirtuin genes, which repair the DNA. We're fueling the sirtuin genes, the resveratrol with the NAD, with the using the nicotinamide riboside, nicotinamide mononucleotide, and the different things that are found in the age pill. And again, we can't say the science is done on their product; the science is done on the ingredients. Um, and so all of this is being supported, and then at the same time, we're getting rid of these now. We're moving into this whole science of senolytics. And, so now, Andrea, I'm going to throw it over to you. And now you can just kind of recap what you've already been wanting to talk about, you know. So,
Well, I kind of did that earlier in the call, but I did mention recently that, by the age 40, half of your stem cells are in senescence.
which
And to
means
me,
that
when
they used to think they went to sleep, but now they found out that they're damaging. Okay.
yeah, they're giving off these toxins, so it's creating a whole toxic load in your body. Plus, they're not functioning correctly to repair things. To me, that was a very scary thing to hear. I was like, what? Like, I've lost half my cells to something that's actually turning them against me. That's not good, And
Turning your own, I like that, turning your own cells against you.
mhm,
So Tom came out with this formulation a year ago when I was down in Australia last year. That was what my
yeah,
tour was about, as I was talking about this exact subject. And the product wasn't even available. It wasn't available until the end of February, first part of
right. We
March.
called it Product X.
Yeah. And but this senolytic product, Tom figured out that there was all these extra senolytic agents, and now for the last year, it's just like all the anti-aging forums that I belong to, all the anti-aging newsletters, they're always talking about senescence,
Yeah, because
and
it's a hot topic.
it's a hot topic, and fisetin is right up there on the top of it. And then I just read a study last week that said that fisetin is by itself you have to take like 1,400 milligrams a day to make a difference. And they figured out, and I'm reading the study. They figured out that if you combine it with a couple other things, that you don't have to take as much. And I thought, oh,
Hmm.
that's interesting. Tom would be interested in hearing that. And I went and read the study, and he already included the extra ingredients in our product.
I know he put like I think 7 or 8 different
Eight, yeah,
ingredients in there. And I remember him actually saying that different parts of the body need a different combination of those substances to get rid of the senescent cells. So your brain might have senescent cells that need a particular combination versus a different part of your body. So I
yep,
mean he covered the whole gamut really. Like he
yeah.
he made the ultimate senescent formula to support
Similar, yeah.
against senescent cells.
Yeah. So now we're kind of covering that, and then we look at the whole idea that the 2009 Nobel Prize was given to a group of scientists because they discovered that your DNA, your chromosomes, are wrapped up in this, kind of this rat's nest type of looking thing, like this ball of yarn, and and they used to think that all of this stuff was just garbage. It was just there, like a shell to protect the chromosomes. Well, they found out that there was a little bit more to it than that. They found out that these were what they called telomeres, and the
Hmm.
telomeres are on the end of the DNA strands. And what they do is they prevent the DNA from over duplication. Because over a period of time, the DNA strand, just from age, just from being exposed to stuff, um, it becomes damaged. And so then when if you would pass on that DNA message, because DNA is a message, if you pass on that message, if that DNA strand has been damaged in any way, now you're going to pass on the wrong message. And
Hmm.
uh, and so they and that's all has to do with these telomeres. And so the science in 2009 was, hey, we can rebuild these telomeres. And uh,
Yeah.
and so Tom took that science combined with some science that he had gotten from ancient China,
Yeah.
and he came up with a product called TSX, Telomere Support Extreme. And in my opinion, I have to say it that way because I don't have a laboratory, and I can't compare the product. But in my opinion, we've got the most powerful telomere support product on the planet. When you look at our formulation, based on the formulation. And again,
Right.
I haven't put them side by side in the laboratory and tested them or anything like that, but based on, the formulation. And so now we've supported another part of the whole aging process.
Hmm.
So now we've got to go back and we've kind of hit all these topics of anti-aging. We hit the topic of bone health and things like that. So now I just wanted to hit on immune health. This last year, um, we've really heard a lot about immunity, right? Haven't we?
Oh
More
yeah.
more than we ever
More than
heard,
we ever wanted to hear.
right? We start hearing about this cytokine storm. We've started
Hmm.
hearing about, all these different things that people are having trouble with. And so discuss a little bit about what are the things that we can do, and we can't make any medical claims or things like that. So we have to always throw that out there. We can't make any medical claims. All we can say is that the products that we're going to talk about support the body's natural system.
Hmm.
So,
Well, you know,
body shield, for example.
right.
Remember you and I started talking about body shield 3 years ago, but it really hit the news. The ingredients hit the news last year because of the ability of the one ingredient called fulvic acid, right?
Right. It prevents the virus from entering the cell so it can't use your cells for replication.
Yep, it attaches to it to the outside, and it prevents it from attaching, and eventually that causes the disruption of viral replication, right? Because
Right.
viruses
Hmm.
replicate themselves, and it does that. But the other thing is that, and I talked about this probably 5 years ago, is that Body Shield is kind of an amazing ingredient. They called it a miracle molecule. That's what it's been called, is one of the miracle molecules, because they found that it not only does it have the viral replication disruption thing, but it can help transport nutrients into the cell, and it could pull toxins out of the cell. So again, you can see where that's something that's really, really good for your body, because according to Linus Pauling, we're all missing key nutrients. And wouldn't it be nice to have a transport vehicle like fulvic acid, which comes from
Hmm.
a decayed seaweed? That's where it really
Right.
comes from.
Hmm.
Decayed seaweed, ancient seaweed, and so it's a natural ingredient that it's plentiful everywhere. It's found in dirt, and yeah, so pretty amazing. I remember hearing about fulvic acid like 15 years ago, and I didn't really pay much attention to it up until all of a sudden, we're really getting hit, with this viral thing, and then it's like, holy cow, that is a miracle molecule. But you know um, they discovered that L-arginine and it helps to
Mm-hmm.
make nitric oxide, and they found that that's so important for boosting the immune system as well.
Right.
And so our product called Thor Restore has this L-arginine, L-citrulline. It's got a few other things that make it pretty amazing. But getting away from the topic of the immune system, going more into the topic of cardiovascular health, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I know immunity is like top of the mind awareness right now. It's what everybody's thinking about. But cardiovascular problems are still the number one killer in America, in the world. Heart
Right.
disease, heart disease, right? And so that's why Tom really put together the formulation because it supports healthy blood vessels, healthy cardiovascular system.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember, us talking about it? What is the L-arginine and the nitric oxide? What does it do?
Oh, it dissolves the plaque buildup in the blood vessels. So,
Yep,
like the guy who won the Nobel Prize for that, the doctor who kind of discovered what that product or substance did, he was a cardiologist, I heard, and cleaned out his clinic. Like he had no more patients because he put them all on L-arginine, cleaned out their arteries, and took care of them.
that's right. And what it does not only kind of cleans it out like a roto rooter, but it makes the artery walls so that they like when I pinch my skin, it
Mm-hmm.
pinches and it goes back to its normal shape, and so your arteries can stretch and go back to the normal shape. Where when you start to have plaquing in your arteries, like you were talking about, when you start to have plaquing in the arteries get hard. That
Right.
won't stretch. That won't
Yeah.
stretch. That's why you don't want to freeze anything in a glass jar because when you freeze something in a glass jar, as the ice expands, the glass cracks.
Right.
And that's what happens with your arteries when you start having atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries. And so this product helps with that and it lowers your risk of that. So what causes the hardening of the arteries in the first place? I mean, let's just keep going down that rat hole a little bit, right? And it's chronic inflammation, right?
Oh, yeah. We've covered inflammation so many times on this call.
Yeah. So a lot of it, and we started talking about this really, I think last year we hit it really hard, maybe the year before even, is that, you take a look at the American diet, the standard American diet. We eat a lot of processed foods in our country. And a lot of processed foods, they contain processed sugars, but they also contain the wrong form of fat. And when you take a look at the fat levels, we got something called omega-3 and we got something called omega-6. And omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. They cause inflammation. And you got the omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. They get rid of inflammation. And you got to have a little bit of inflammation because that's how your body deals with if I sprain my hand, sprain my wrist, I need a little inflammation to make everything kind of work. But what happens is that we're supposed to have a ratio of somewhere between 1 to 1 all the way up to 1 to 4 omega 3s to omega 6 ratio,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't. Our ratio is somewhere around 1 to 16, and I've read all the way up to 1 to 25. Well, actually, I read 1 to 32. So
Wow.
we have 32 omega 6s for every one omega 3. So what's that going to do? I mean, if you have more of these and less of these,
More
right?
inflammation.
Pro-inflammation. It's going to cause
Yeah.
inflammation. So they're saying all of us are walking around time bombs because we have this chronic low-grade inflammation. Our body is like a walk around time bomb looking for anything that inflammation can cause a problem. Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, immune system problems. I mean, all these different things that are triggered by inflammation. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the easiest things that you can do, you don't have to buy a product for it, just change your diet. Start
Right.
eating more of the foods that contain omega 3s and less of the foods that contain omega 6s. And I know the keto diet is really popular right now. Everybody's, jumping on the keto bandwagon. I mean, even Sizzle, we come out with a keto product. And so it's pro fat. It's getting people to eat more fats. But we got to make people aware that there's good fats and bad fats, so omega 3s,
Right.
omega 6s. And, a lot of people, they want to do more of the plant fats, plant-based fats, but the plant-based fats don't, most of them don't contain enough omega-3. They're more pro-inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to get people to start watching it. So there's kind of a learning curve with this whole thing. And
Yep.
that's why you and I are doing this talk today because we're trying to link it. Hopefully in a I don't know how long we've been on here. Um,
43 minutes.
Oh, we've been on 43 minutes already. So we're getting, I mean, there's a couple of things that I just really want to talk about. So omega 3s, learn a little bit about that. Go back, review the video that Andrea and I already made on it where we cover this in depth. It's on my
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/C// Sizzle World Team, right? And I'll put that down in the comments below. But you can actually go watch that video that we did on that and talking about omega-3s. So that's going to help. And then there's some other things you can do too. We have a product that's called fucoidan. And fucoidan,
Love fukoidan.
yeah, it comes from an extract from brown seaweed, right?
Yeah.
And uh, and brown seaweed, some of the Asian countries in that part of the world, they used to call brown seaweed mother's milk because it
Uh-huh.
had some of the same capabilities with the immune system as colostrum, as that first milk that the mothers gave the babies.
Right.
And and so it's been used for years in some of these countries, and so there's I was just hearing the other day there's like over 2,000 studies on fucoidan, on brown seaweed extract.
And some people might not understand that you're not going to use research money on something that isn't going to, prove results of something. So when you say there's 2,000 studies on this, it does a lot of stuff to be studied, or they wouldn't waste their research money on it.
Oh yeah, because what they want to do is study on how does it work, so they can go back to the lab and they can come up with a fake version of seaweed. They want to
Right.
come up with a man-made version of it. And so that's the whole thing. So you look at that, and that helps out with the immune system, like we talked about. But it also is a great anti-inflammatory product. Helps out with getting supporting the body's way of getting rid of inflation. That's the way we got to say it. It doesn't, can't do any, it's not a drug. And so it can only support the body's natural system in doing some of this stuff. So we have to always throw that disclaimer in there, because I don't want people to get in trouble saying, oh, here's what it does. But it's an amazing product. And recently, Tom came up with our weight loss product, right?
Right. Hmm.
And one of the ingredients in Sizzle Thin, kind of tie it in with that. I mean, all of our products are kind of tied together when you start looking at it. Um, that one of the other properties of fucoidan is it's a thermogenic, which means what?
Increases increases body heat when you're burning. You burn more
Yeah,
calories.
increases the body, internal body, and I notice it, Andrea. I mean, I notice it when I take it. Sometimes when I take it, I can feel I feel like I get a little bit of a sweat.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, yeah, and so just kind of I brought up so Thizzle Thin, so let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, 72% of Americans are either overweight or obese. 72%. That's most of
That's
us. I mean, if you look
huge.
around, yeah, two out of three
That's
people
huge.
that and so the answer to it, years gone by, we used to talk about weight loss. I think there was one year on this call that we talked about weight loss for like 4 months, didn't we? From
Yeah.
December through April. And remember that year? That was like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, we kind of killed it that year.
Yeah. But we were really pushing the whole idea of the intermittent fasting and ketogenesis and all that. And and I lost some weight, but the problem with it was, Andrea, is that I was always hungry. And I just couldn't stick to the
Mhm.
ketogenic diet. It turns out that I really didn't understand it. I was still eating a lot of foods that were high in sugar, namely my dairy products, because I thought, oh, milk, that's keto. And I used to drink whole milk, and then I found out, holy cow, is that loaded with sugar? But yeah. And so we came up with this product. Now Tom came up with this product called Sizzle Thin, and I've lost 28 pounds. And
Yay.
I mean, Andrea, I'll tell you what, I have no hunger. I mean, I
I
try and
know.
go to bed
Yeah.
with a little bit of hunger at the end of the day because I think that it helps me, burn at night when I'm sleeping because I want to wake up and I want to jump on that scale and I want to be down every morning. And so, but I was just sharing on Facebook this morning that yesterday I ate a little over 1,000 calories, which you don't have to be a calorie counter, but I use
Mm.
this app that you introduced me to called Carb Manager. And all I'm doing is managing my carbohydrates,
Yep.
and the carb manager app watches everything else for you, your proteins, your fats, and that. And so I'm keeping my carbs down below 50. I know that if you want to get into real ketogenesis, you got to be down around 20, but I keep mine down around 50. And because of that, my calories are naturally going down. I've lost 28 pounds. I don't have any hunger. I don't have any food cravings, and that makes it so it's possible that I can control my diet instead of my diet controlling me. Instead of food controlling me, I control it. And and and, and let's face it, Andrea, obesity is um, I think it's probably the number one killer, right?
Because it contributes to everything else.
Tributes to everything else. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, so I mean, we've covered a lot of things today in 45 minutes. We've covered a lot of topics, and we went through them rather quick. We didn't go into detail and everything, but and we could talk about energy production. We can talk about brain health. We can talk, maybe next week we can continue on kind of this whole line.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sound all right? Instead of going overtime today, let's just take off from there next week.
Okay.
So I'll let you close out the call, Andrea. Thanks for being with me every Tuesday. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. For all of you that are listening, if you listen to the recording, if you listen to this live, thanks for being with us. Share the information with people because there's just a lot of people that don't know. They don't know, and they think, oh, I'm vegan, therefore I'm healthy. But boy, I tell you what, I know a lot of unhealthy vegans, and
Yeah.
they look sick. They look sick,
Hmm.
and the answer to it isn't going and getting your stomach stapled, that surgery, the bariatric surgery. So anyhow,
I'm
Andrea,
back.
all
Somebody
right,
tried to call me.
I'll let you close out.
Okay. Well, Doc and I went over a lot of stuff today. And if you're new listening to this, possibly, like you didn't grasp all the product names and stuff as we were going through that. So get back with the person who shared this with you and ask them for a website where you can look at that stuff or ask them for recommendations because they'll know which products. Like if you heard about something that you were interested in, go ahead and get back with them and they can guide you to that product. So have a great week and we'll see you next Tuesday at noon Eastern time. Bye.